I have with me a very esteemed guest today, Mr. Bhushan Kulkarni.
Currently serving as L&D head at ICICI Lombard.
He has also recently launched his book, The Irresistible Manager.
This book is for those professionals who are in corporate life, maybe minimum 3 years of experience up to 20-25 years of experience, that kind of a stretch. What do you do? So how do you prepare yourself is one of the very important questions that this book tries to contemplate and hopefully gives answers to people. We have discovered that leaders can do that is the moment they have the urge to speak, they can take 2 deep breaths and say, is it important for me to make this point and jump in at this stage, or can I take a breath, step back and listen in the moment what is happening. The moment they practice this, what we have seen is it creates some shifts in their life. बस एक सुनने वाले की ज़रूरत होती है, कहानी वहाँ से बदलना शुरू हो जाती है. Technology और AI would outsmart any one of us in that room with reference to knowledge, right? But what remains in the human territory is the sense-making part of it. I came across the research by MIT Sloan. They have done this research for what top corporates are teaching to their managers these days. And what it is saying is, which I would want to put an acronym called as DAJ, D-A-J. Decision making, right? Ambiguity and judgment.
So you have sort of a Netflix of learning.
Of course, that glamour and that entertainment element is less. But
That's
we
why
are
it's a Netflix of learning.
Learning. So we are calling it as an edutainment. शायर गालिब has said, तो मंजिल तो भटक के भी मिल जाएगी, गुमराह तो वो है जो घर से ही नहीं निकले.
Hello people, welcome back to Office Tales and People podcast, as we call it, OTP. I have with me a very esteemed guest today, Mr. Bhushan Kulkarni, an L&D professional with over 2.5 decades of experience. He has also recently launched his book, The Irresistible Manager.
Bhushan is a learning, organizational development and leadership professional currently serving as L&D head at ICICI Lombard.
So welcome to our podcast, Bhushan. Are you excited?
Absolutely, and thank you very much for inviting. And what I liked about this is a very interesting acronym for your podcast,
OTP.
I mean, that's everyday life is dominated by OTPs these days. But this OTP seems to have a very different connotation and a very timely and powerful connotation. So thank you. Feel privileged to be invited here.
Are you ready for your first question?
Oh, of course, yes.
Absolutely.
Go on.
Okay. So, Bhushan, we all talk about learning and development in organizations, and you've had a long career with L&D. Can you tell me about one program where it has actually made a difference to a person's life, where something has changed or shifted for them, or something where a team has grown cognitively? Or is there something where you've worked on and the revenue has impacted of the organization? It'll be great to hear something from you on that.
Sure. So, yeah, there are quite a few examples, and, singling out one could be a challenge, but let me try an attempt. So, there was this program for the first-time managers that we conceptualized. And there's one gentleman, so we conceptualized the program, we rolled it out. And one person, initially I found him to be a little confused and all. So in the break, we tried checking with him, saying if everything is okay. And he said, while everything is fine, you seem to have done your homework and I'm kind of enjoying it. But, I have a typical problem. And we asked him, what is that problem? He said, yeah, I got promoted. All this while I have been an individual contributor. I did an amazing job. I won everything that, so he was from sales. So on the numbers and all, he was always rewarded and he had those awards and all and glittering functions and all of that. And now he said, I'm promoted. So I said, what's your problem? You are anyway part of this program. You will anyway understand what are the challenges and all. He said, yeah, that's fine. And you're doing a good job there. But my challenge is I'm promoted and I'm in the same branch. So the people with whom I used to have tiffin in breaks, in lunchtime, and they were my colleagues, now some of them are reporting into me. How do they take care of themselves while doing this transition? And how do I take care of myself while doing this transition without compromising what is expected from my job? Now, of course, some of it you factor in while designing, but this to him was the most important problem in his life. And when we tried working out some solutions through individual mentoring to him, besides the general training program that he was anyway a part of, I think the transformation that you see, and it starts from the glow in the eyes of something shifting inside. People may or may not be able to express it on your face, but that's shift that you experience. Number one. Number two, what it has translated into is the person stabilizing in his role relatively faster and delivering his agenda and going back to his mojo, which always gave him the kick that he is a star performer. I think that was an amazing shift and a journey. Let me pick up another one, if you may allow.
Yes, please.
This is about a senior most leader who I was coaching. Now, this person is a industry stalwart, amazingly knowledgeable guy. People come to him for an advice, and hence that orientation of only I have to speak, right? But that was, in a way, unknowingly putting some limitation to him. And in one of the coaching conversations, we discovered that as a challenge. So from I tell always to can I have some space in my life to listen to others? And that shift, while it appears to be easy while speaking, but it's a very difficult transition for someone with 2-3 decades of experience, always an expert kind of a thing, to listen to people. But the moment he created that small shift in his life, you know what happened? People started coming to him not only with problems, but with the kind of opportunities that they see on the ground. And that created a breakthrough to the extent of creating a 2000 million Indian rupees opportunity for him in less than 12 months.
Fantastic.
So that's the revenue part.
Absolutely fantastic.
So I have a follow-up question, if I may ask. So Bhushan, what I heard from your previous answer, do you think active listening
Yeah.
is very challenging for leaders? And if so, what is that one thing that they can do to become active listeners?
So to answer your first question, yes, yes, yes. And that's, I can't overemphasize the challenge that is there across. And how do I know that? By having an opportunity to hold a space as a coach to almost 120 senior most executives now in India and abroad. And across, we find this as a challenge. So is it a challenge for leaders? Yes. Should leaders change? Certainly yes, because that's something that is going to break that hold or a mold for them and open up something in their life. And that usually happens. That's something that we have seen. And one of the simplest ways that we have discovered that leaders can do that is the moment they have the urge to speak, they can take 2 deep breaths and say, is it important for me to make this point and jump in at this stage? Or can I take a breath, step back and listen in the moment what is happening? Very simple method. But the moment they practice this, what we have seen is it creates some shifts in their life. And hence, what I would like to say is, बस एक सुनने वाले की ज़रूरत होती है, कहानी वहाँ से बदलना शुरू हो जाती है.
Awesome. So Bhushan, next question is mine. And I think I have this very valid question that every person in the corporate world is thinking, which is AI is around us everywhere.
Yeah.
And there's so many of us maybe rethinking on how exactly we are going to go ahead with our careers per se.
Yeah.
You have started your journey very early on in your HR field. Now, have you been doing something for many, many years that you're rethinking about because of AI? And would you like to share that with the rest of the corporate world, especially in the HR world, in terms of how can they relook at things or reimagine their roles, or whether they have to be contributors in terms of changing the fabric of the corporate world?
Yeah, so that's a big question to answer, but let me begin with what I did as an individual and what is the belief that I had, and with all the AI thing that we are talking about, what is one shift that I'm trying to make, and maybe that can be scaled up at function level or HR level, which is primarily your question also. But it starts with an individual. Okay. So my initial thinking was that in every meeting, I have to be the smartest person. And hence that entire endeavor of preparing for the meeting with the lens that I have to look smart. While today, the preparation still continues. I mean, of course, that's the fundamental. Okay. But the orientation is I may not be the smartest person in that room. Technology or AI would outsmart any one of us in that room with reference to knowledge, right? But what remains in the human territory is the sense making part of it. And you also asked me the question about hence what L&D or HR can do is to put their entire energy onto teaching or making people aware of how do we really make sense of things that are happening around. Yeah, that's one. But that shift starts with an individual. Then it can start at a group level, then it can start at a function level, and can be scaled up at organization level in that sense.
So, can I say this word like what you were saying? Is it like connection between people? Are you saying that HRs or the L&D teams should focus on building connection with people because that's something AI can't do? Is that what you're?
I'm coming to that. So
Okay.
one is, am I able to make sense of what is happening around? So one is making sense with myself, making sense in the environment that I'm sitting, let's say in that meeting and all, which again corroborates to your point saying it's connection. So connecting to myself, connecting to the environment, and then making sense out of it. So connection becomes one of the necessary processes to be able to make sense out of it. And in fact, the research, I came across the research by MIT Sloan, and they are talking about, or they have done this research for what top corporates are teaching to their managers these days. So while I was doing some research for my book, I came across this research as well. And what it is saying is, which I would want to put an acronym called as DAJ, DAJ, decision making, right? Ambiguity and judgment. So under these environments where technological disruptions are happening, how are you as individual and as manager or a leader able to make ethical decisions? So ethical decision making is one of the important focus areas that their research is saying top organizations are trying to focus their energies around. One. Second, ambiguity. I mean, we don't have to talk separately how ambiguous the situations are today. Always the data is insufficient. The leaders or managers are required to make faster decisions, more accurate decisions, but move on and not get stagnated by insufficient information or data availability. Okay. So hence, under these ambiguous situations, how are you able to move forward and make your unit aligned and take them forward is another findings that they have. And the third one is the judgment. Under all these fast moving parts, your ability to make that sense, make that judgment, that these three they are saying will remain in human domain for the foreseeable future, and hence we have great scope of being assured saying technological disruptions we need not get so anxious in terms of hence what we will do.
Just as a follow up, if I may ask,
Yeah.
have you used AI in any of your L&D processes and has it helped you? I think that will be something interesting which our audience may want to know.
Oh, yes, certainly. So, we have something called as learning experience platform. So, when we institutionalized learning experience platform, one of the interesting features of it that we leveraged was the curation capability of AI for people. What it means is that platform, first of all, allows individuals to identify their learning goals. So, which means if you and I are seated next to each other, your screen may appear different than mine because two of us may have our individual learning needs very different from each other, right? Number one, we identify our learning goals. Then what happens next is the AI engine kicks in, right? What it does is, basis my choice of what I want to learn in that year, it curates the content which is in public domain across the globe, starting from the internal context, so internal content curation, and then going out and searching whatever is publicly available, curating that information and delivering it to me. and it does same thing for you. So which means it gives a personalized n is equal to 1 level of personalization for each one of us to be able to learn. So we started the application of AI there, and then L&D of course has many other things where AI can go in, where we have experimented with couple of things. Assessment, for example, is one of the important areas where AI is helping a lot, and we are leveraging that in that sense. So using AI for curating questions, and how it does is, you have a PDF of a product document or a policy document, you upload that. What AI does, and of course with the prompt, so what AI does is it allows you to create the question bank basis the information that you have fed. And that question bank, of course you still need human to validate it, you still need subject matter experts to do that. So it's AI complemented with human intelligence and sense making, which we were speaking. Combine that together, we have a very beautiful application in L&D space. Of course there are many, but these are the two I thought I'll quickly pick up to respond to your question.
So you have sort of a Netflix of learning in your organization where everything is curated and personalized.
Personalized, yes, absolutely. So Netflix kind of an experience is something that people, of course that glamour and that entertainment element is less, but
That's why it's a Netflix of learning.
Learning. So we're calling it as an edutainment.
Okay.
Yeah.
But that's where I can always contribute to make it edutainment if
true.
Netflix of learning is
Absolutely.
required.
Yeah.
Besides the point, I have another very interesting question
Sure.
for you. Chat GPT is not an AI. It's a tool which basically collects all the data fed into it by people like you and me, and then gives answer based on what that particular tool has learned, right? Over so many prompts, over so many of the available data on internet. How do we as learning professionals, learning and development professionals and HR people, how can we make sure that our people are not getting dependent on the answers that they are getting on GPT and not losing the ability to be authentic, original, share their honest experiences, and not getting biased with what they read on ChatGPT? How can we all do something which is going to keep our authenticity in the learning space?
Sure. And that's an important question, and that doesn't just restrict it to L&D professionals. I think across the globe,
Absolutely.
all professionals are struggling to find
With that,
answers to
yeah.
this. And there is a deeper problem that we may land into if we are over dependent on such an external source. Then overall our cognitive abilities can reduce over a period of time, and that will be a far more bigger problem to deal with. Of course, even then L&D will have a bigger role to play, by the way. But coming back to our question, but that's a small question to answer in that sense, but the problems are much deeper beyond that. So how can we take care of ourselves first to begin with, so that we can lead the organizations with those examples? By defining where we will use artificial intelligence or generative artificial intelligence, and where we would want to restrict that usage as an individual restrictive policy, because as a group policy you can't reinforce or rather enforce that onto me, because it's available in an app with me. I am not dependent on any organizational approvals for me to access that. It's available in my personal capacity. So how can we have that moral code as a function, saying, okay, you use it, no problem, no harm in it, but to what extent and for what reasons and what purposes? If we adhere to that as a group commitment, what it does is it doesn't impact my cognitive capabilities. I am still able to harness the best that is available from across the globe. I can integrate these two and offer something really good for myself, for my function, and for my organization. I think that could be the first step.
So there's lots that happens in organization, right? There are wins, there are some things we lose, and of course there are a lot of mistakes people make, right? So what is that one mistake you think L&D professionals make all the time, and what would you say on how could you do that differently?
One of the things that we constantly fall into is in love with the modules that we create. What it does is it runs the risk of we missing the business problem that we are solving completely. And that often happens once you get into the nuts and bolts of it. You start, falling into that, module creation process, and you start loving it. Then suddenly, if you have to take a step back and figure out, saying, "Oh, this is not really solving the problem where I started with," and that happens often. It's an iterative world. The business problem changes or shifts a bit, or there's some modification that happens by the time you create the content or a design and a module and all of that. You are reluctant to take a step back and change something. That is something that I have often observed becomes a challenge for L&D professionals. Now, one of the ways to do it is to structurally understand how iterative processes work. And that is one of the reasons why a certification like CSM or CSPO, which is certified Scrum Master or certified Scrum Product Owner, those kind of things, even if they directly do not relate to L&D, might help, because they are project management tools. They are talking about agile philosophy, principles, iterative methods, and some tools around it as to how do you operate. It may or may not have a direct application discussion during the session, because the largely information technology related processes get discussed during such certifications. But you can always have a separate conversation amongst your peers, saying, okay, I learned these methods, I understood what agile is, I understood the tools that perhaps other people are trying to use while designing the product and all of that. How can we really use it in L&D, and particularly to handle this kind of a problem where once I start the journey, it's not a linear journey. And design L&D designs have always assumed that it's always a linear design, that once the business team member have articulated the problem is going to be static, the problem is going to be constant, and hence I can always go linear till the time I complete the design and development process, which could be maybe 4 months, come back to the business team only to realize that what was now that is no more a problem. How do I in between do the check-ins, which these kind of certifications offer a very fantastic and scientific tool for us to kind of go back and implement. So if you're able to do that, I think we will be sorted. But I think that's the first step. And there are many things that L&D teams can really improvise. But since you asked me to restrict to one, I thought this is the most important one that we can deal with.
So, Bhushan, I want to ask you this question about, one learning principle or people insight that you think will not change regardless of AI comes or something else comes tomorrow. What is that one thing that you think will remain as it is?
I think there are quite a few, but if we have to pick up one, there's this equation that comes to my mind. Psychological safety plus sufficient stretch is equal to learning that sticks. This equation is unlikely to change in the foreseeable future. Because if you really look at it, if you are able to create a psychological safe space for people to interact, to thrive, to feel comfortable, to experiment, maybe to fail, and eventually to succeed as a unit. If you are able to do that, look at the environment or visualize the environment that's going to happen. But is that the only thing that is sufficient? No. Perhaps what they want is a meaningful work, right? And many research have also kind of indicated that if you are able to kind of create a meaningful work for people, they tend to enjoy it a lot. So now just look at that combination: psychological safe space, and also I have enough stretched projects or goals to chase. Combine these two together and look at the kind of learning that people at an individual level and at a group level will experience, and hence the kind of satisfaction that they will have. So that is unlikely to change, irrespective of whatever technological innovations we are talking about. This will still remain, and this will be the most important point for people to experience, to contribute, to enjoy, and all of that. And again, that also brings the challenge then to the supervisors of these people. The challenge is, how do you create such environment for your set of people? So that's the challenge at a supervisory level. But this is what is likely to remain.
Personally, it really resonate with me because I think psychological safety is a very, very prime thing that organizations a lot of times are not focusing on.
Correct.
But the ones who
Yeah.
are actually creating spaces that are helping people to not just feel happy at their work, but
Yeah.
also when they go back home,
Absolutely.
they are happier family people. And that's what I feel. Thanks for this answer because it totally, totally resonates with me.
Absolutely. Actually, it resonates with me as well, being a
Wow.
happiness coach, Bhushan. This is exactly what we speak about when we're coaching. At organizations, we call it three levels of happiness. And there is a pleasure level, there is a passion, and a purpose. So, when you talk about purpose, it's about meaning that you're saying that if you give people meaningful roles, it leads to sustained happiness.
Absolutely.
But what happens is mostly HR land up doing activities on the pleasure part.
Correct.
And that happiness stays only for a day or two.
Correct.
And it comes back
True.
into the normal state. And therefore absolutely resonate. It's actually a formula for happiness, frankly.
Wow. Great.
So, Bhushan, nowadays, most organizations want growth. They want productive teams. And, in doing all of this and progressing towards growth, I think one of the pieces which plays a very important role is culture in the
Absolutely.
organization.
Absolutely.
So, tell me, as a learning and development professional and also an OD expert, how can this team make an impact or a difference to the culture of an organization?
Wow, that's a very profound question, and the answer to that is yes. L&D does make a difference in shaping the culture of the organization. Now let's look at how do you identify a culture, or how do you get to know a culture about an organization? When you walk into an organization, there are some things that you start observing, right? Artifacts, the murmurs that people talk while they walk up to the cafeteria, the kind of language that they use, and all of that. So for an outsider, let's say, if we were to have that lens to understand the culture of an organization, these are some of the indicators of how the culture might be for this organization. That's an external lens, right? Someone is observing it for the first time, experiencing it for the first time. Like you are walking onto the reception, how are you greeted? What is the conversation that's happening? These are some very subtle indicators, but powerful indicators of how the culture of this organization might be, right? Now, how you experience it is through people, right? And whenever we are talking of people, L&D definitely plays a role there in shaping the culture, correct? So in short, what L&D does is it shapes the language of people within the organization, and the language used over a period of time shapes and rewrites the culture of the organization. So if I were to put an equation, this is how it is: L&D shaping the language used over a period of time shapes or rewrites the culture of the organization.
Very nice.
Nice.
Really
Any
nice.
example of something that you may have done, any work you may have done around culture?
Lots, quite a few. And what it starts perhaps with the senior most teams. So one of the things during COVID, what happened was you have a schedule of meetings, right? And there are physical meetings. Many organizations have a tendency of having a lot of physical meetings, and the decision making for partners or for customers happen when cross functional teams come together from different teams, and they decide something for a partner, because unless they come together, you can't offer a solution to a partner or a customer. So now imagine an organization having to do such physical meetings. They may be short meetings, but a must have meetings to be able to offer a comprehensive solution to partner or a customer. Come COVID, and you're forced to go virtual. Now what do you do? Because you are accustomed to have, your culture is to have physical meetings to resolve a issue for a partner or a customer. Now you can't do that. So how do you find those four people who otherwise you would have walked up to on a particular floor, right? Challenge number one. Challenge number two, even if you are able to do that, then your MS Teams is always a red dot, all four having time free at the moment that you want, is challenge number two. Third, even if you find all those green dots, you find yourself lucky only to realize that this gentleman, while you are seeing that green dot, this gentleman or a lady is busy over a phone call. And that was creating a lot of frustration or a fatigue amongst teams, because that is not the culture that we were accustomed to. So what we did was we took few steps. one of that is, how do you decide asynchronously, and what are the tools, what are the methods, what is the mindset that you would want to have, and how do you percolate that as a culture? That is something that we picked up as one project, and to whatever extent during that period it did help to reduce the time pressure for people, because 12 hours your calendar is blocked, otherwise back to back you're on calls, which is a different level of fatigue. So when we kind of created that concept or training program, and when we included supervisors in it, saying how you would create this culture amongst your team and make them comfortable with this kind of a method, I think it really worked well for them.
So, Bhushan, maybe a cliche question, but very important one. What's the one piece of advice for L&D leaders who are going to take up this particular role in the coming years? What's your advice to them?
So, in fact, two, Shikha. One, while we fall in love with the content, please understand that context is going to be important. So, if you are assuming content is the king, no problem in assuming that, but please understand that context is kingdom. So, you need to understand the kingdom first to be able to, serve the king. So, understand the context and then get into the content creation process. Okay, how do you do that? And that brings me to point number two, and the acronym that can be used to explain point number two is BAC. BAC. One is business, A is alignment, right, and C is communication. Okay, how are you able to understand your business, or do you understand your business well? How is your organization making profit or making money? Most of the times we find it challenging for HR or L&D professionals to comprehend that. We don't spend enough time. So if you're able to spend time as a budding L&D professional or a leader, I think that would give you a great mileage. So that's part of the B. How do you align, which is the A part, how do you align your learning strategy and learning components, if I may use that word, to the business is another thinking that you will have to do. These are all difficult things, but that's where it is a journey. Okay, so B, A, and C, how are you able to communicate to your stakeholders? And what do you communicate? Everything from your position, your perspective, your point of view, to the results of training. Because if you don't communicate the results, you're likely to get questioned on the efficacy of whatever you're doing. So BAC is another one. And for all of this, you need to engage with the stakeholder. So you need to move, travel, understand it on the ground, and all. So which the prominent शायर Ghalib has said, तो मंजिल तो भटक के भी मिल जाएगी, मंजिल तो भटक के भी मिल जाएगी, गुमराह तो वो है जो घर से ही नहीं निकले.
Oh, very nice.
Nice.
Superb. Very nice. So, I think this gives me very good answer, and I really love what you said, that content is king, but the context is
kingdom.
I love it. I think you've nailed it over there, and thanks for saying it in so poetic manner. So I loved it. Thanks.
Thank you.
So, Bhushan, we all know that L&D always, maybe not always, but sometimes faces challenges on budgets, right? So, if I tell you that you have no constraints, Bhushan, you can spend whatever you want and do whatever you like, what is that one big project which you will take on and why?
Wow.
That's a tricky question, huh?
Yeah, that's a tricky and a big one. But there's something that is brewing inside for quite some time. And that also has been one of the triggers for me to write the book. So, you know what? The middle management of not only our country, but across. While you asked the budget, and that gave me an impression about the organization, but I'm assuming that if there were no limits to that also, then what is it that I would want to contribute to the industry or to a particular profession? So one, someone who is calling themselves as manager, handling people, right up to someone who is calling themselves as leader, right? To them, I would want to create a central capability grid so that they don't become the subject of elimination ever from the organizations. So which means at an organization, they will have a prerogative to discuss, decide, right size, which over a period of time, I mean, they can take those calls. But how can managers keep upgrading themselves, reskilling themselves, build newer capabilities amongst themselves so that this manager remains in demand always, or this leader is able to kind of shape things always in an uncertain or a newer territory, how do we build that capability amongst people is something that I would like to do. And as an extension to that, I would also want to do something for our L&D or talent development professionals. And that is one reason why I created a framework called as Craft. Of course, the details of which may be for some another podcast, because I also need a space for you to invite me one more time. But then, one of the things that I realized is L&D professionals or TD professionals find it very difficult to earn a seat at the table. They're always the one who are order takers. Everything gets over, everything gets decided, and they're told this is what needs to be done. I think as talent development professionals, if you're able to earn a seat at the table, you can, and you will be able to contribute much broader, much deeper, and much wider to the organization. But the point is, TD professionals need to prepare themselves. What do they prepare themselves on? How do they prepare themselves on? How do they scale up that journey and transform themselves to be able to earn that seat at the table is the process that I would want to contribute. And Craft, as I said, is an acronym which I got it copyrighted eventually. And I said around that, if I'm able to kind of assist people with that framework that allows them to do all this that I just spoke, that would be a big one to play.
So, Bhushan, many congratulations on your book, Irresistible Manager.
Thank you.
I want you to share 3 takeaways for professionals to pick up from that book, which will give them real reason to buy the book also and to read the full book.
Yeah, so in fact, Shikha, and thanks for asking this. The genesis of this book was one disturbing news that I read, last year, that one big organization with 1.5 lakh kind of employee base, they decided to eliminate managerial positions suddenly, and they wanted the groups to self-organize themselves and run. And I said, wow, who is thinking this without giving enough thought to the science behind it? I'm not sure whether they have given the thought or not, but this was quite disturbing. And I said that was a call of accelerating the already brewing thought of writing a book, and also that becomes the starting point. Which means this book is for those professionals who are in corporate life, maybe minimum 3 years of experience up to 20-25 years of experience, that kind of a stretch. And this book really then talks to them, says you have been trying to climb the corporate ladder, and that's the aspiration, and that's the time that you have been spending, huge amount of time of your life you're spending with that aspiration, with that dream and all of that. And suddenly if this kind of a thing happens, what do you do? So how do you prepare yourself is one of the very important questions that this book tries to contemplate and hopefully gives answers to people. That's one important reasons I think why all corporate managers or leaders or any leader or people manager should really look at buying this book. And the final one, which can interest managers and leaders, is saying, as manager or a leader, how can I deal with the coming wave of AI? One, at an individual level, and second, as a manager or a leader where I'm custodian of few things. Are there any frameworks that I can fall back on in a rapidly changing scenario where every week there is some news on AI development? But is there something stable, more assuring for me to keep looking back, falling back on, and keep developing on those lines? Those are some beautiful things that people can discover in this book. And importantly, will be able to apply that in their routine, in the flow of their work.
I'm sure that it's going to help a lot of people.
So Bhushan, one last one from me. If you open LinkedIn nowadays, there's always so many articles either talking about toxic workplaces or toxic managers or toxic bosses. Yeah. So if there is something that you want to change, what would be your formula of moving away from these toxic workplaces into a happy workplace?
Yeah, and I agree with you. I mean, you look at reports and people are unhappy, disengaged, and all of that. And we say so many things are happening within the organization. And why are still people unhappy? And the pivot, I believe, it starts with leadership, eventually flows down to that manager around which, many of them, their organization definition starts and ends with their manager, or at best goes up to, skip level supervisor. To that extent, organization for them means this. So which means if this person has to be pivoted, what is it that we need to really look at or do for this person, or what this person needs to do for his team or her team to be able to create that happy environment. So toxic, not necessarily always people will talk. I mean, many a times deep silences I have observed as a manifestation of toxic boss, toxic work environment, and all of that. Are you able to sense that as an organization? Do you have mechanisms at the first place to sense it? It starts with there. And even before that, it starts with, do you have the intent to sense it at the first place? And that intention gets defined at a leadership level, which is what the leadership's role is, to my mind. Then you will in a way set up the processes to understand whether it is toxic or not non-toxic, or how toxic it is or how less toxic it is, and all of that. Then comes the role of, by the way, these two are not just HR domain, okay? HR can be the custodian, okay? But the leadership at large is responsible for enabling this. Okay, once you enable that, then you have tools and methods to sense that. And today you have enough number of tools or survey methods that can informally reach out to employees to understand their mood, their sentiment, almost in real time.
Absolutely.
You are in a position to understand that. And once you collectively understand what are the top 3 challenges that you have, you could really create a lot of interventions. And from L&D perspective now, or talent development perspective, I can share, once you understand that as a problem statement, you are able to kind of create a lot of interventions in that. So for example, managers not giving opportunities to people to speak up, right? That can also create toxicity and all of that. Managers not using appropriate language while talking to their colleagues, to their team members, that can also create toxicity. Yeah, managers suppressing the aspirations that people have or something that they would want to contribute. Few examples, right? Or few observations that have come out of those surveys and all of that, that I talk to people and they keep talking about these things, right? How can you create interventions to be around manager first? Not going to the employees first, but first to the managers, and say, how can you ease things out here? One, by working on him or her at an individual level, and then offering some tools, easy methods for them to really adopt, encouraging early successes, celebrating early successes, so that and demonstrating it right from top. I think these are few methods that can really help move the needle on happiness.
And what does it mean for you personally? What does happiness mean to you?
So 2 levels. At a personal level, a very nice tea or a coffee, a good environment, and a non-fiction book in my hand gives me great happiness at a personal level. A quality lunch or a dinner time with a family where I am able to get into their world, understand their joys, journeys, successes, aspirations, celebrate their successes. So that gives me a great, happiness. Yeah. A coaching conversation that offers clarity at the end with all the tough questions that I am usually known as a tough coach, so but empathetic coach. So those are at a personal level. At a professional level, when you see that glow in the eyes of people after the training session, when they cross over and those eyes tell you that yes, your intervention touched my life, it made a difference, it improved me professionally. So when all of that happens, when your team member contributes significantly with a larger purpose as an objective and they grow, I think all of that gives me tremendous happiness.
Fantastic. With that, thank you very much for being on our show. It was an absolute pleasure having you with us today, Bhushan.
Thank you for coming on Office Sales and People podcast.
Sure.
It was really a great pleasure for you to come and share so many interesting aspects of learning and development.
Thank you very much. Indeed a pleasure and an honor. And thank you for the invitation.